Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 420. Meeple Nation, April 2022 news.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation Podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. Go to their website, check out their product. We had Hug a MeepleCon a couple of weeks ago, and we have an episode coming up in a couple of episodes that we're talking with Hug. While we were at this Hug a MeepleCon, we had 5 tables set up. We had 5 toppers on those 5 tables. 3 Mycrofts that were downstairs, and then we had the 2 Watsons with the extra long leaf upstairs. It worked out great. We had plenty of space. The Mycrofts and Watsons survived. There was food eaten on some of them. We even had a drink spilled on it. Surprisingly, the mat cleaned up really nice. We had no issues with that. Poor Debbie was pretty upset that she had spilled her drink. I tried to comfort her and tell her that it was okay. It was just a thing. But it cleaned up really well. So
Nice. It was truly beautiful. Never before has a gaming space been so wonderfully decorated and so beautifully set up with such awesome surfaces.
I agree. Go check it out. GameToppersLLC.com.
Welcome to Meeple Nation. We are your hosts. I am Andy Holliday.
I'm Nathan Howard.
And I'm Dave Holliday.
Check out our webpage. We have blogs, photos, links to all of our episodes. We have bios if you're interested in looking at that. If you have any questions, you can email us at meeplenation@gmail.com. If you like what we do, we would appreciate any support you could send our way. Jump over on our Patreon. There's a link on our website. We'll give you a chance to support us and help us improve what we're doing, help us to get better equipment, and just improve your overall experience. Have any other questions or want to reach out to us also, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We're also on Twitter and on Instagram. Check us out.
We would like to welcome some of our new patrons. We would like to welcome Linda Merkley.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
We'd like to welcome Adam Wills.
Adam, thank you.
Very much.
And we would love to thank our favorite werewolf player, Dave Bremer.
Dave, I have to give you a shout out. Some people who, my son was one of them, and I can't remember who else it was. I think maybe it was Doug's daughter, but people who don't really even know you were talking about your epicness.
Thank you, Dave. We appreciate your support.
Also, we would love to welcome Nathan Tenney as a Patreon.
Thanks to Dave's friend from Washington.
He's our friend from Washington.
That's true.
As mentioned, we are talking about April 2022 news. We have some highlights. Some of our highlights come from Hug a MeepleCon. Hug a MeepleCon we did over Friday and Saturday. Since Andy was cooking his brisket on Thursday night, we came over, helped with a little bit of setup, and then mostly just watched Andy and Sabrina prep for Hug a MeepleCon while we played some games. The ironic thing was that the ladies from Hug were staying in an Airbnb about 5 minutes away from us, having their own pre-Hug a Meeple night. We started sending some pictures back and forth, and we're like, wait a minute, you guys are already here? Why didn't you just come over?
Could have joined the Thursday night game night.
It was really good to have that experience with them. These ladies are a ton of fun. Played some great games. We had Corey there, Doug from the Dig there, a lot of friends and family. Very good time. On Friday, I think we had over 30 people there.
Yeah, it was awesome, the number of people we had in and out of the convention. I was thrilled how many faces we saw, and different faces. It was great.
And I was thrilled with the food. Andy smoked this huge brisket, and it was awesome.
So good.
That was an epic brisket. I've never seen a brisket that size. 24-pound brisket. So for those of you that know briskets, you know that is a monster brisket.
Claudine, our friend from Hug, was not able to make it, and she sent me a text, Andy, and it says, will you tell Andy thank you so much for the very yummy food?
So did someone take some home to
Yep.
her? Oh, that's
Julie
awesome.
took some home to her, and so she was able to try some. Yes, it was probably cold, but it was still awesome.
I missed having Claudine there. It was too bad that she couldn't make it.
Yeah. Then the next day we had tacos. Logan had smoked... do I say Logan or do I say Andy smoked? Logan prepped pork roast and smoked it on Andy's smoker. Doug brought some smoked chicken, so we had pork and chicken tacos that day. Those were awesome. There was a ton of food.
There was.
Nobody left hungry. Marissa planned all the lunches. We had pizza and chicken salad on Friday.
Give a little plug, Fritchett's Donuts. He makes some awesome donuts, and he was kind enough to make some for us.
Yeah, except for he must have left the donuts home because all we got was the donut holes.
Those are giant donut holes.
They were giant donut holes.
Yeah. So he doesn't usually make the donuts. He usually just makes them all holes.
If he left those donuts at home, those are Texas-style donuts.
Yeah.
We played several games. Didn't get a total count of all the games that were played, but I would say we played close to 50 different games.
Yeah, that's probably pretty close. Given the number of people we had, just the fact that we had at least 4 tables in use constantly. The 5th table that was in the TV room was sometimes interrupted with little boys playing video games, but it still got used an ample amount. I think that's probably a fairly close estimate on the number of different games we played.
And so this is a thing that we do. It's a private little party, I guess. I don't know if we call it a private party if we talk about it every time it happens, but we have one that happens up north in Pleasant View, and then in the fall we go down to Harriman and invade Eric and Julie's home. They are gracious enough to house us there. I don't know if we should take all 5 of those toppers to Julie's house. That's a lot to pack.
That's a lot to pack.
So let's jump into some of our highlights. Dave, what do you got?
The last month was awesome. I had a bunch of things that really made me happy and scratched my gaming itch. Gloomhaven. Oh, how I've missed you. We finally were able to get Gloomhaven back to the table. That was awesome, and I can't wait to do it again. Seafall. I've been enjoying this. We've been playing it for a while now. I seem to enjoy it more every time we play it. It just seems to get better and better. Dead Reckoning is a Kickstarter that Andy got recently, and it's pretty darn awesome.
I had thoroughly enjoyed the game I played of Dead Reckoning.
I mean, how many times have you played it now, Andy?
I've played it 3 times.
You still love it
I
every time?
absolutely love that game.
Right.
Designer John Clare, who did Mystic Vale and Edge of Darkness, so it has that card crafting element in it, but I think this is done much better than the other 2.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you.
The other 2 are still great. The development that is in Dead Reckoning is amazing, and I very much enjoyed my game.
Fennel borrowed a copy of Ark Nova and taught us Ark Nova. That's a really cool game, too. And that's one I definitely want to play a few more times. See if that first play was just beginner's luck, or if I can continue to develop strategies that'll do well in that one. Feast for Odin, that's been on my list for a little while. Got to play that. I think it's a really good game. I don't know if I'll ever be any good at it, but it was really enjoyable. I finally got to play Cooper Island.
What did you think of Cooper Island, Dave?
Definitely want to play it again.
Did you lose, by the way?
I did.
Horribly?
I'm sure I did. I don't remember the scores.
You lost by quite a bit, actually.
Oh, that's right.
But it was your first time playing.
Right.
You were playing against 2 people that had played it before, and that is a game that, if it's your first game, you better plan on losing.
That's why I asked. Even my second game, I did better.
You actually did really well your second game. You more than tripled your score in the second game.
But you guys were still a considerable amount more than me.
No, because I believe I won that second game, and I think I scored 35 and you scored 30. It wasn't a shellacking by any means, and I think you scored 9 points the first game, or 8 points your first game.
Something like that. It was ridiculous the first game, and I was like, this game is dumb, and I feel like you guys didn't teach me all the rules, and you're just poking fun at me.
Yeah, no, it's the game that you can't prepare people for how they need to develop their game. I don't think it's possible to really give someone enough information that they can just right out the gates go, okay, boom, and do something good. I'd like to play it again. There are things about it that I'm not sure that I like. There are things about it that I do like.
I've had Cooper Island on the shelf for a while, and it made me realize how much I really did enjoy the game. That being said, there's such a large learning curve to it that individuals that they kind of turn their nose up at it.
I did look up our scores from the 2 games that I played. And the first game, I actually didn't do as bad as I felt I did. I had 11 points, Andy, you won the game with 20 points.
Right.
And the third game, you won the game with 35 points, and I had 32 points.
Oh, that's right. It was 32. So, yeah, you did great.
It was right there in it, but it's still, the whole time, I sure felt like I was losing.
So, Dave, you actually did better your first game than any of us did in our first 2 plays of it. Like Nathan said, my first score was, what did you say, 21?
20.
Yeah.
20. So I won with 20 points, and that was actually our second game. We played the first game and realized we did a few things wrong, and I'd only played it once prior to that, and it had been years. Played through, realized we did something wrong, reset the game, played again. We didn't even count scores that first game. Enough rules that we missed or didn't understand exactly, we just counted that as a practice. The high score is 20 in our game, and you scored 17 in your first game. So I think you did really well.
Yeah.
I also had Dead Reckoning as one of my highlights. I got that Kickstarter. It's not very often I get to get a game to the table as many times as I have in such a short period of time with Dead Reckoning. Especially a game that is a little bit longer, about a 2-hour game. And I'm so thrilled that I've been able to get it to the table 3 times in just a month or so that I've had it. And speaking of Kickstarters, tonight actually was able to play Meeples and Monsters, which is a new Kickstarter I received. I got to play that with my daughters and my mom. My mom's not a gamer by any stretch of the imagination, but she actually did really well. She grasped the game really quickly, and it was enjoyable to watch my girls interact. Sierra ended up really beating all of us in that game. She played an amazing game of Meeples and Monsters. Such a fun game. I got to play Dinogenics at HugaMeepleCon.
Whose copy did you play?
We played Doug's copy.
And what did you think of that? That's one that I was wanting to play.
I liked it. Did terribly at the beginning because I was fighting a really nasty headache in the morning. And by the end, the headache was gone, and my game, you could tell.
Your game improved?
Substantially. I need to play it again with not being in pain and crippled by not being able to think clearly. Once the fog lifted, super enjoyable. It was a fun game. I liked it a lot, actually. Overall, HugaMeepleCon was biggest highlight for me. A lot of work to put on. It was so much fun. It always is. It makes all that extra work totally worth it. Fun people to hang around and play games and to socialize. It's great. It's been a great gaming month. I mean, it always is when HugaMeepleCon hits during that month.
Totally.
So I've played quite a few new games this past month. At SaltCon, I picked up Cloudspire. I've wanted for a while. After I got it, I couldn't remember why I wanted it, but I did still have fun with it. It's a chip theory game. Got these big clay poker chips in it. The box weighs a ton. Based on a tower defense game, if you're trying to send your armies into your opponent's territory, and it's all based in the sky, these floating islands. Played with Corey and James and I liked the game. I thought it was very fun. I look forward to trying it again, maybe hopefully get you two to play.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And as Dave mentioned, we got Gloomhaven back to the table, played that a couple of times. Seafall, I'm thoroughly enjoying Seafall. I don't know about you, Andy. You seem a little bit disgruntled when playing Seafall.
I do get a little disgruntled when playing Seafall. The last few have been less terrible because the dice haven't completely loathed my existence.
And you won the last one, didn't you?
No.
Oh, you were just close, though.
I was close. But is it weird that we started Gloomhaven and it makes me miss Descent a little bit?
Not wrong at all. Andy and I got to play Ankh, Gods of Egypt with Corey. I really liked this game. I was surprised.
I was too. I was pleasantly surprised. I remember, Dave, you wanted to play this at BGG-Con.
Yes.
When they kind of were explaining it to me, I'm like, I'm out. I am not going to like this game at all.
Yeah.
Just by their explanation. It was actually really fun.
Sculpts were amazing. And
they really were. They were crazy good.
They could use a wash for sure, but they looked awesome by themselves. Both nights at HugaMeepleCon, we got to play a dumb game, but it was hilarious, and that was snake oil. You're a snake oil salesman trying to pitch a product to an individual. The judging player is going to have a card passed to them. They can choose between the two sides. So like one side will say teenager, the other side might say a dentist or something like that. And so then you have this hand of 6 cards, each with a single word on it. Combine 2 of those words to form a product that you're going to pitch to, for example, this teenager. As it goes around the table and each player pitches their product, the game was very subpar, but the experience was way above. I laughed considerably. Andy and Sabrina were sitting on the couch observing. I had never seen Sabrina laugh so hard. Andy was crying at points because he was laughing so hard. Without fail, the products start to become more and more questionable.
And once you start down that road, everything becomes questionable.
Absolutely, yeah. But it was hilarious. We played it again the next night. It was still fun, but that first experience...
It would have been hard to beat that first experience.
Yeah. I would look forward to playing the game again after a while. It's not something that you want to play every weekend. You start to get things repeating. There's a whole bunch of cards, but there was 3 products that were pitched in the second game that were also pitched in the first game. Still, I had a blast with that game. Super big highlight for me.
It was definitely a better version of Apples to Apples.
Yeah.
Is kind of how I see it.
A fun version.
A funner version of Apples to Apples, because I don't think Apples to Apples is really fun. Snake Oil, I think it depends on the group you're playing with.
Absolutely. I got to play a game called Q-Birds. It's a set collecting game, but you're using cards from your hand to place in the shared space to bookend different birds. And if you bookend a row, meaning that you put one card on one end, and then you will pick up all the cards that are in between that bird that you placed and the identical existing bird on the board. If you get a certain amount of birds, then you get to keep 1 or 2 of them, then the others get put into the discard pile to get reshuffled. To win the game, you're trying to get 7 unique birds in your tableau or 2 sets of 3 birds. Simple game I'm looking to pick up to play with my wife at some point. Got to play Skull King, which is one that's been around for a while. Trick-taking game that's very similar to Rage, except for it goes the opposite direction. Rage, you start with 10 cards. The last round has 1 card. In Skull King, you start with 1 card, and then the last round has 10 cards. Some of the mechanics are the same. There's definitely a difference in the nuance of the game. If you like Rage, I think you'll very much like Skull King. And if you like Skull King, you'll very much like Rage.
I like skulking.
Then you probably will like Rage too, Dave. First game that we played at the con was Lords of Vegas. This is something that Sarah had talked about several times, and I had missed the opportunity to play it. We got to play that first Friday. It's all about trying to build up casinos, trying to get them on the strip, build them up enough that it'll attract patrons and earn some big money. Thursday, when Andy and Sabrina were cleaning, Corey taught us Perseverance, Castaway Chronicles, Episode 1. Kickstarter that I just got recently. Your cruise ship crashed on this island. You have the deadly sea on one side, so you're trying to build and sustain your civilization. But the problem is you got dinosaurs that are coming from the inland to the coast to destroy your villages. Another big game, but very fun. It has episodes 1 and episodes 2 in it. We played episode 1, looking forward to trying that with episode 2. We also got the chance to play Pendulum. Very interesting. I think both of you guys will like this. Simultaneous action. You can just take your actions as you want, as long as the space is available on the turn, and it rotates between when you turn sand timers. Have one you can take actions, and you're adding tokens. When the sand timer's not at that location, you can gain resources, and vice versa. Simple game, but very complex at the same point. I think both you guys will like Pendulum. And then we also got to try Machikoro 2. My daughter loves Machikoro, and we have all the expansions for Machikoro. Picked up Machikoro Legacy, and then this is Machikoro 2. And it has similarities, and it has same buildings and structures, but the way that it plays is different. And it's different enough that provides a positive experience and a playable experience that you're just not going, oh, this is all the same thing. Completely different twist on how you score your points. It worked out really good. I really liked that, and that was Machikoro 2. So those are kind of my highlights, kind of breezed through those quickly. Didn't want to spend too much time on them. We also want to make sure we save some time to talk about some new games that have been announced and some new games that are available. I've talked in the past about One Deck Dungeon. Logan made the comment. I played it with him until it hit my 10 for 10, and I put it back on the shelf and said we were done. In that same series is a new game that's been announced, One Deck Galaxy. For me, I prefer the sci-fi over the fantasy feel, so I'm looking forward to that. Very similar experience. You're going to fight aliens instead of monsters and be able to overcome those traps and aliens and encounters. And that's One Deck Galaxy, coming soon.
Another game announced. I kind of like this idea. It's a dungeon crawl game. It's almost like a dungeon crawl game to introduce younger kids to that dungeon crawl experience. A game called Cora Quest. 1 to 4 players, designed by Dan Hughes and Cora Hughes, and the publisher is Bright Eye Games and Lucrum Games. It is an exciting, accessible, cooperative dungeon crawling game, people aged 6 and up. Players work together to guide 4 adventurers exploring the dungeon, avoiding traps, finding treasure, fighting monsters, and even sometimes you get to rescue a gnome called Kevin. a game that kids and grown-ups can both enjoy with equal amounts of fun. It's also a game that sparks creativity. It's a customizable dungeon crawl game. It sounds really kind of cool. I like the idea of getting younger kids to experience games that are maybe a little deeper, get them to think a little bit more, be a little more creative. Gateway dungeon crawl game is kind of what this sounds like to me, and I think that sounds pretty awesome.
The Siege of Rundar, a game by Rainer Knizia for 1 to 4 players, 60 to 90 minutes. BoardGameGeek.com has it rated at 7.2 overall. Looks like a pretty cool game. Looking through the pictures, the components of it look really cool. The board is a little castle. It's a game that includes area movement, cooperative gameplay, deck, bag, and pool building, dice rolling, and once per game abilities. All things that I really enjoy in games. And the theme of this one just is kind of cool too. The theme and the artwork and everything have my interest piqued, I guess. Since time immemorial, the mines of Rundar have supplied gold to generations of dwarves. Today, only a handful of them remain, guarding the fortress surrounding the entrance to the old depleted mine, or so it was thought. This group of dwarves have been fortunate enough to accidentally stumble upon a new vein of the purest gold and have managed to extract a small treasure. Unfortunately, just as they were about to set off to the safety of the nearest stronghold, they discover that the old fortress of Rundar is surrounded by orcs who are willing to do anything to get their hands on the precious metal. That is kind of the setup for that game, and it looks pretty cool.
I know I talk down 2-player games because most of the time we don't have that issue of having 2 players. But there is a new game that is out called Rest in Peace, which is a 2-player game, and the reason I chose to talk about it is it has a playing time of 15 minutes. If you're going to play a 2-player game, 15 minutes is a great slot to have that game. So you can use it as a filler game as you're waiting for others to finish their game, or you can do it as just a quick battle game. It's kind of similar to War, but the Rest in Peace is a 2-player game in which you play a family of ghosts composed of 21 cards from 1 to 6. Each round you will be fighting for a mansion. Trying to outbid your opponent, managing your hand will be critical, and knowing when to withdraw from a fight might lead you to the final victory. Very simple, very direct game. Battling out kind of reminds me a little bit more of Balloon Cup. I don't know if you guys have played that.
Yeah, you and I have played that one several times on
Yukata.
on Yukata.de.
I have it around here somewhere. It's a great 2-player game.
Mm-hmm.
James doesn't like it because it's very much a take that kind of game. I think you'll run into a little bit of that in this Rest in Peace. Simple 2-player game, 15 minutes, worthwhile in my opinion.
Are any of you fans of Dungeon Drop? Did you know that there is a sequel to Dungeon Drop that has been released? It's called Tavern Tales Legends of Dungeon Drop. 2 to 5 player game, best with 2 to 4 players. Playing time is 20 to 30 minutes. Designer is Gregory Skolnick. Publisher is Phase Shift Games. Following your perilous drop into the dungeon, you are called home to the Traveler's Tavern for some warm ginger brew and an evening of heroic tales shared with the local rabble. Complete your Dungeon Drop story with Tavern Tales, as you and your companions compare mighty deeds in a strategic game of boasting and one-upmanship. In this raucous card game of set collection and subtle bluffing, 2 to 5 heroes scheme their way to becoming the most renowned hero of epic legends. Tavern Tales plays over a variable number of rounds, and in each round, the player's turns are going to be as follows. Step 1, you use your hand of hero cards to stake your claim. You select one of the locations in play and identify which treasures you claim to have found or how many monsters you slayed there. In step 2, you dispute your companions. Other players may now use their hand of hero cards to dispute your claim and attempt to take the glory for themselves. In step 3, turn your stories into legends. After a bit of one-upping and strategic bluffing, the final victor for the claim is declared. That player collects the disputed treasure or monster cards and scores points based on how many of those identical cards they have previously collected. Through this set collection aspect, players are incentivized to remain in the lead on several types of claims and in order to prevail. So the game ends when one player has achieved enough fame to become the most renowned hero of epic legends.
Dungeon Drop, I remember when Fennel first got that game. It's a little box. It reminds me of the Tiny Epic game. Extremely simple, right? You just dump the stuff on the table or the floor wherever you're playing, and there you go. For such a simple thing, it's really, really fun. It's exciting. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and their box, it looks like it's the same size and shape as Dungeon Drop. I mean, you wouldn't think Dungeon Drop is a game that you would have a story to or much of one, right? I mean, obviously there's a theme, but to have a sequel and kind of push more of a narrative, and I kind of like that they're doing that with games more. It kind of makes them a little more interesting. And the fact that it's a completely different style of game. We talked a few months ago about the West Kingdom trilogy, and it was very similar, right? They're kind of pushing a story, and each game is extremely different from the previous one. I kind of like that they're doing that with a lot of games now.
Yeah, I have my copy of the expansion in the other room. My Kickstarter arrived about a month ago now.
Another one that looks kind of cool to me is a little game called Riverside. This one has a 7.3 rating. The thing that I like about this one is it's 1 to 6 players. I like that it goes up to 6. 15 to 25 minutes, which is not my style, but in this case, it's one that is interesting to me. So Riverside is a roll and write game, but it's a little different. It's a game that has a modular board that you build out, and it composes the route that you take on this boat. That's what the game is you're on a river cruise boat. You're competing to entertain your guests the best, do different excursions with what you end up rolling. It seems like it's going to be pretty cool. Roll and writes, when I first was introduced to them, I was thinking in my head a big 2 thumbs down, but I actually like them a lot more than I thought I was going to.
You know, I'm with you on that, Dave. When they first started coming out with roll and write games, I thought the same thing. I thought, well, that's dumb. I think every roll and write I've played I've really liked. They're great. They're fast, typically, right? Not always, but they're typically going to be faster games. Great filler games. I think they've all been fun. The roll and write, the flip and writes, I think they're great.
Last month we talked about a game called The Time You Killed Me, which is all about time travel and trying to eliminate your opponent. On the heels of that is another time travel game called A Battle Through History. The Time You Killed Me is a 2-player game. A Battle Through History is a 2 to 5 player game. Lasts a little bit longer, 90 to 120 minutes. Each player wears the clothes of a time-traveling storyteller whose journeys through historical eras enable them to relive epic battles alongside legendary troops and heroes. During a game, players play era tiles into the gear of history to customize their deck of cards and to move their character in space and time in order to fight and recruit troops from different historical battles or challenge opponents in player versus player combat, as you build an army made of soldiers from a very different age. Collect relics from different places and times. Whoever collects the greatest units and the bravest heroes leads them to victory. We still haven't tried That Time You Killed Me. Somebody needs to pull that off the shelf of shame and open that up. These time travel games really intrigues me. I've had fun with time stories where you're trying to continually jump back in time to correct the issues in the timeline. Intrigued to see how this turns out. And with it being a 2 to 5 player game, that makes it even more interesting. I don't know if I'm super keen on the player versus player element of it. Going through time, gathering artifacts, building an army, I like it.
Unfortunately, Logan's not here to talk about this game, but I think it's one that he would enjoy. It's called Vigilante. You form teams of heroes to take down villains, and it's a semi-cooperative hidden identity game for 3 to 5 players. Playtime is 90 to 120 minutes. Designer is Reed Mascola. The publisher is Paranoia Rising Games. In Vigilante, you lead a team of heroes to fight back a swarm of villains running free in the city. It brings social deduction, action management, and tableau building into a unique combination that leaves you with many different paths to take to accomplish your goals, new strategies and synergies between heroes, and obviously a lot of tension because it's hidden role. A variety of scenarios or different game modes depending on the preferences of the players. The game plays in rounds where players have 4 actions. They can either fight and imprison villains, they can recruit new heroes, search for equipment and other helpful cards, or they can heal. Afterwards, players secretly roll their dice and contribute one of them, which sometimes will help the group, but usually it will hinder the group. In one of the modes, it's called Brought to Justice. Each player gets a secret role. Good players represent the majority and must imprison 7 villains per good player before the end of the game. Evil players are trying to foil their plans, and neutral players, which I thought was interesting that they had neutral players, not just good and evil, but neutral players have independent missions. They just generally throw chaos into the mix between the good and the evil players. The Shifting Alliances game mode takes the brought to justice game mode and creates even more uncertainty by only guaranteeing one good player, while the rest is a mix of any combination of good and evil or neutral. Even though there's a possibility that all players are good, it will take time to gain each other's trust. You could end up sabotaging your own victory because you don't trust someone who's maybe a good player and you think they're evil. I can see this being a game that Logan would love.
This one I thought looked really cool too.
The year is 1660. Pirate ship crews are determined to find out who is the best captain amongst the pirates. This game is all about you, Andy.
Yes, it is.
Glory Island features easy-to-learn rules and very fast, simple turns. You must outwit your opponents to claim fame and fortune. It has 2 different game boards in the box and also includes a mini expansion in the box. That's always nice, extra content.
Extra content's great.
Glory Island is played over a series of rounds in which players simultaneously play sailing cards from their hand. The cards' values define the turn order and how far the ships can move on the board, where a player's pirate may be placed on the board. Depending on where they are placed, pirates may receive gold, treasure tokens, or barrels of rum. The cards may also provide bonus actions players can use to gain advantages over their opponents. When pirates occupy all the spaces on the island, the player with the most pirates on the island will gain the most glory. 2 to 4 players plays in 30 to 45 minutes. Love that time frame for some of these little games. Fill that void while you're waiting for others to finish games or whatever. But look forward to that.
You know, it's interesting. There's area control in this, and I'm not huge on area control games, but an area control game that's 30 to 45 minutes
It makes a huge difference.
Completely huge difference.
Let's jump to some crowdfunding. On GameFound, there's a game called Last Light. This is 2 to 4 players, 4 to 75 minute game time. It's by Gray Fox Games and designed by Roy Canaday. Has a little bit of area majority influence, some dice rolling, grid movement, hand management, and some of my favorite things, simultaneous action selection, and it does have a solo play, which I like to have in a lot of the games. In Last Light is a fast-paced 4X game, so that means expand, explore, exploit, and exterminate. With 3D planets and a rotating board in which players playing asymmetrical alien factions simultaneously gather light right before the death of the universe. Players select an action card, then all players take their actions simultaneously exploring planets, mining for resources, gaining new technology, and commanding fleets, all while racing to the center of the rotating board to the last known white dwarf star to gather light for their civilization to survive. The first player to gather 20 light wins. They overcome their rival and lay claim to the last light in the universe. I like the idea of this rotating board as the planets get sucked into the white dwarf and are eliminated. Find that on GameFound. It looks very interesting.
It does look very interesting. This is one that I thought that several of you guys would be interested in.
I really like the idea of this game. It's called Dark Quarter. It's launched on Kickstarter. Cooperative, dice-rolling, map edition storytelling game. App-driven. Based in New Orleans, Louisiana, circa 1980. New Orleans, Louisiana, a vibrant city of music, food, and magic. Neon lights flicker in dirty puddles up and down Bourbon Street. The innovations of the modern world clash with ancient and terrible traditions. A murder is never simple. Beaumont Agency, staffed with a roster of brilliant, colorful, and ultimately flawed private investigators, specialize in solving cases that no one else can crack. In Dark Quarter, the adventure game is set in a dark, fantastical vision of the 1980s New Orleans. Players each take control of a Beaumont agent and work alongside one another to solve the worst crimes that New Orleans has to offer. It's a world full of magic, where hexing curses are sold on every street, where voodoo priestesses and creatures of the night are lurking around every corner, and where even the most mundane crimes have a tinge of the supernatural to them. Through multi-scenario campaigns, the game tells a rich, dynamic story and invites players to make critical decisions that will not only affect their characters, but change the direction and course of the story. Characters are not simply avatars, easily replaceable from scenario to scenario. Instead, they are woven into the very fabric of the story itself. Their destiny and the destiny of New Orleans are inextricably linked together. This is, I think, one of the benefits to the fact that there are more app-driven games. Your decisions in these types of games change the game and actually matter. Previous storytelling games where it was, you had books and, yeah, there was a large variety and some of these books had a lot of content, but I really like, because of the app, that makes it a little easier for your characters to actually affect the world around them and help you feel like you're part of the game. Almost like a legacy game, but it's not really a legacy game, it's a campaign game. I think it sounds awesome. This is, once again, another one I think Logan would really like. The investigation and a little bit of a horror theme, 1980s New Orleans setting is kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it is from Lucky Duck Games, which Logan is a big fan of.
He is, definitely, yeah.
I agree. I think this is something that Logan, if he hasn't already backed, will be backing. He's been working some overtime, which is why he's not here today. He might very well be backing this game.
So we've talked a lot about our highlights. We've talked about new games coming out, Kickstarters. It looks like there's some great stuff coming out, some great things to look forward to, great things that are out now that we can take advantage of and maybe add more games to our bursting game shelves. Nathan?
I'm sitting right here.
I'm sitting right here too. The finger's pointing at me too. Let us know if there's any games that are coming out that you are looking forward to. Plenty out there for everyone, it looks like, a large variety. So until next time,
we'll see you at the game table.
As always, we want to thank you for listening.
Check out our website. We have all sorts of cool things there. Love those blogs. Get a deeper look into the writing side of Meeple Nation.
Join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. I look forward to seeing you there.
Follow us on Twitter @Meeple Nation. We also have Instagram
under the same name. We also want to thank our sponsor, GameToppersLLC.com.
We love their product, and they have so much goodness out there.
And we also want to thank Braden Detergent for our music.
Meeple Nation, April 2020.
You almost had it.
I almost had it. Before you start, I got to ask a question.
My breath was like all the way in my lungs. You made me waste it.
Don't make me waste my
I
air.
hate waste. That sucks.
Dave yawned and then...
My yawns are usually silent.
Well, with that small of a mouth.
I was going to say, yeah, mouth's so small, nothing fits out.
But it should make it louder because
I know, because it's like...
Should be more like a whistle. Yeah. That's going in the end.
I don't breathe out when I yawn. I breathe in.
It's all about trying to build up a casino. You build up your casinos.
It's an exciting blah, 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 blah. Following your power. Blah, blah, blah. I can talk tonight.
Battles or challenge opponents, or challenge a
pressure.
There you
The year is 16 City. 16 City?
That's a great year.
That was a great year.
I remember back in 16 City.